We're going to continue with lesson 10. We have set up our register and login pages. You can just download those exactly as they are from D2L. We are going to make a few changes to them later on, but they should be fairly functional as they are. But before we can go ahead and create a page to save users, we need a data store in the database. So I've put an item here, the user table script. So if you open that item up, really simple script. We're going to create a table called users with 3 fields: a user ID, so that'll be an auto-assigned primary key; a username will allow maybe up to 100 characters, and then a password. Actually, I do want to change something here. Sorry, bear with me. I'm going to edit the HTML. Our password, and I'll explain why, we should be using 255, not 128. So there's our new script. You may just need to refresh the item. So then what you need to do is connect to your AWS database in MySQL Workbench. So you can open up MySQL Workbench, connect to your database. Over here, you can just double click your database name to be connected. And then you can just copy and paste and execute the script. I already have a users table from my morning class, so I'm not actually going to run this script, but you need to make sure you paste it in and execute it. So this will build an empty table, so we then have a place to store the user accounts. Now, our password, 255 characters, it's not really going to be that long. But remember, our passwords are getting hashed, so we are converting plain text values into a longer random string of letters and numbers. And we're making it 255 because as we'll see a little bit later, that's actually what the PHP documentation tells us to do. So we'll come back and look at that character length a little bit later. So please go ahead and create your table and run the script. It will work for now the way I had it at 128 characters, but the recommendation is to make it 255. So what we want to do now is work on a page that when we fill this out with a username and password, you can see our regular expression in action, for example. If it's less than 8 characters, my HTML, my regular expression will validate it. So when I click register, I get a 404 because our form is calling a page that we haven't built yet. So our register page, it's posting to save registration.php. We need to build this file next. And a lot of what's here we've done before, but there will be a couple things that are new. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new file, which must be called save-registration.php. So it must match exactly the form action in our register form. So you can see the name, save-registration. We'll open a set of PHP tags. We'll set the page title. And we will require header. We'll end our body in HTML. And then we'll go ahead, before we write any of the code that we need here, we'll go ahead and comment it out. We'll walk through the process. We'll sort of pseudocode exactly everything that needs to happen on this page. And then we can fill in the code one bit at a kind of test it in pieces. Because there's quite a bit of stuff that's got to happen here. So the first thing is capture inputs. Then we will validate the inputs. Right? We'll want to make sure we have a username, we have a password, and that the password and the confirmed password values match. That the user has not entered two different passwords. We will display any error messages to the user if there are any. Then we will connect. Now we don't want to save the user right away. How come? So let's say the form is valid. There's no input errors. Why don't we just want to create the new account right away? That's right, Andrew. We need to make sure we don't already have that account already. So we are going to check for existing username. Do we already have a user with this? And then if username not found, we will hash the password. Then save the new user. Lastly, we will disconnect and redirect to the login page. So after somebody signs up, if we had the ability to send confirmation emails on our AWS account, we'd send a confirmation with a link they'd have to click to verify their account. We'll have to skip that step. But we'll take them to the login page instead. So some of this stuff is really repetitive. It's things that we've done before. And then this section here, we're going to have to do a couple things we maybe haven't done before. So we have 3 form inputs on our register page. So we're going to use the post array. I'm going to create variables that match my form inputs. Again, we're not using get. We're using post for our form. We definitely do not want to use get here, because if we do, those passwords are going to show up in the address bar, which is extremely dangerous. So we're going to grab the 3 text inputs from the register form, and we will simply store those as variables. We now want to run a little validation. Akeem, yeah, we could. SendGrid does. Probably, I think, a bit beyond our scope, but you're right. We probably could do this if we had the time. Thank you for that suggestion. So we'll say if our username is empty, I'm going to also create my flag variable here of OK. So if we have no username, we will print a red error message. Required. And we'll toggle our flag. Just going to check something here for a moment. Going to check whether this is the class we used for errors before. Oops, sorry. So it's consistent. Oh, we didn't really use. You know what, maybe instead of I'll use alert. Use alerted. So it'll be kind of a light blue message. I'm going to check the password variable, same thing. And now I don't really need to check that the confirm variable isn't empty. I just need to compare it to password. So if password does not equal confirm, again, I'll print out a message and just say passwords. So let's try it out like this. And I want to make sure if I enter two different passwords that I get a message kind of in light blue saying that the passwords don't match. I will try this out. So if I put in two different passwords, different lengths here, and I go to register, I get this message that the passwords don't match. If the password is the same, I get nothing. So that's the correct behavior we're looking for. If our OK variable is still true, we can then carry on with our logic, connect to the database, and let's look for this username. So I'm going to indent all of this stuff because it's only going to happen if our form is valid. If OK, I'll open a curly brace, and then I'll close it down here. Nothing else happens if our OK flag is false. Error is already printed out to the screen, we can stop. So we will connect to the database. We're going to look in the users table for a record with this username. Equals, and then our parameter. We don't want all the users, we want to filter the list for the username that just got entered in our register page. Does this username already exist? So we will create a command as usual. And then we need to fill that username parameter with our username variable. Now I'm going to put mine in as 50 because I created my table this morning. This morning we used 50 characters for the username. You can use 100 characters, but mine was limited to 50. We'll execute the query, and then we're going to fetch a single user. Do we have a user that matches this username? So we can say user equals, and I can use the fetch method. I don't need fetch all because this just returns one row. We're not going to get a list. We're either going to get no result or we're going to get one result. So fetch all is not required here. So this code is going to tell us if we already have this user in the database. So now we can simply check this user object. If the username exists, then this user object is going to get populated with the user ID, a username, and a password. If the username isn't in the database already, then this object is going to be empty or null. So we will say if we have a user, that means this username already exists in the database. So in that case, we want to print in a message and stop. So we're not going to do anything else here. In this case, we'll just disconnect right here. So we've queried the database and we go, wait a minute, we've already got this username, show an error message and disconnect and stop. If we have an else, username not found, so move this, this comment should go here. Yes, I agree, Tuani. It definitely makes it easier. It just returns an object. So this check will basically tell us if it's null. We could use the empty function as well. This is just a little simpler. So if we get into this else, it means our username doesn't exist. So now we can hash their password and save them. So we're going to modify the password variable. We're going to convert it from the plain text version into a hashed version. And we're going to use a built-in method of PHP called password hash. Password hash takes two parameters. The password we want to hash, so that's our password variable. And then we have to supply an algorithm. So we're going to use constant, which is password underscore default. Let's take a look at this a little more carefully. So the password hash method, you can read about it in the docs. So the password default, it uses bcrypt, the encryption library, and it's designed to change over time. So at the moment, it will give us a 60-character password, but they say, make sure you allow up to 255 characters in your table because this algorithm gets updated over time and eventually it may allow a password hash of up to 255. Now, this also includes default salting. I think somebody mentioned salting the password earlier. So let's take a quick look at what salting does. So here's a good example of what salting does. So we type in a password of hello. By salting it, using a random algorithm, it will add some random text onto the password. And this is then included in our hash. So what this means is even if two users enter the same password, it will be stored as a unique hash. Okay, so this happens automatically. This is automatically baked into the password hash method. So we don't have to salt the password. PHP will salt them and then hash them automatically when we call the method password underscore. And now we just do an insert into the database, basically. So we set up a new SQL variable. We're going to insert into the users table. We do not save the confirm password. That's just a validator on the front end to make sure the user types in their password correctly. We don't need to save two password values. We will make a new command with our SQL insert. Again, we're going to bind the username parameter. I can just copy that from above. We also need to bind the password. And here our length is going to be 255. So we're setting up our insert to create a new user with our username and password parameters. Then we're going to populate each one. And line 50, this is where the new user actually will get saved to our database. We'll disconnect. Now I don't want to log in yet. I don't want to redirect yet. I want to run this code and see if it works. If we redirect and there's an error, we're probably not going to see that error message. So I'll maybe just print out a gray alert that says registration success. So we should get either a username already exists. If the user doesn't exist, we should get a gray message that says registration successful. And then we can go and look in our database. We should have a new user account with a hashed password. I'll leave the code up for a minute and then we can go give this a try. Once we can create a user successfully, then we want to try and register with the same username and make sure that we get a username already exists. Here. So I'm going to save those changes. Now, because we're going to need to log into the site regularly, what we're going to do is I want everybody to create a user account with the same credentials. So that way, when you come back to class a week from now, you don't need to remember the login because we're all going to create the same login in our database. Okay, so let's go and try it out. We're going to go to register. So we are going to create a user with this credential, user@gc.ca is the username, and our password will be test1234 with a capital P. I'll put these credentials in the chat as well. So user@gc.ca and test123. I'm going to try out my register feature. Okay, it tells me that username already exists in my database. Because I already created it. So I'm just going to delete. Hang on for a moment. I'll try this again. Okay. Well, I'm going to delete that user. And then I'll try it again. I already did this morning. But if your code matches mine, it should work. Okay. I've deleted that user account. I'll go back and try it again. So now if I go to register, okay, let's see what's going on. Error in my SQL syntax. What did I have the word values here twice. Thank you, Alex. Values goes here. I had it in there twice. Okay, so I'll take that out. I can just hit refresh and resend my form values. And now I get registration successful. Cool. So if I go and look in my database now, here's my 60-character hashed string. Now, I'm going to try to re-register. If I hit refresh, it's going to send that same user account again. So I resend. And now the second time it says, nope, can't do this. We've already got this user. So when I query the database, I still only have 2 users here. I'm going to register again with a different user, but I'm going to use the same password so we can see that the salting is going to ensure the password is unique. So I'm going to go back. I'll create, you don't have to do this, but you can if you want. Let's say I'm going to create an admin user. And again, I'll keep the exact same password, test 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've registered a third account with a unique username. And even though I entered the same password for all 3 of these accounts, the salting ensures each one is unique. So the password will never get duplicated. Yes, we did, Alex. Here, line 27. So only if our flag is true do we even bother doing a duplicate check. Right? If the validation is no good, there's no point connecting to the database at all. So now that this is working, I could add a redirect here. So we'll just take the user to the login page right away and let them log in if they're able to register. Now, we have server-side validation that compares the passwords, but we don't actually have any on the client side. So we should add that as well. So right now I can register here. If I put an extra character on the end, I can still submit my form. Right? It gets caught here, but we also should ensure that there's checking on our front end as well. So we can use a little JavaScript that when we click the register button, we want to call a little function that we're going to write that's going to check that these 2 are equal. So I'm going to go to my JS folder, and we created a scripts file a while ago with a confirm delete. We also want to create a compare passwords function here. So we want to get the password and the confirm values. We want to compare them together. So we're going to get the password, and we want to read the value attribute. We'll say if password 1 does not equal password 2, we will return false. Otherwise, and we'll add some visual cues on here in a minute as well. But this should cancel our form submission. We add a handler that if the passwords don't match, we don't want our form to submit. The form will only get submitted if these two values are the same. So now we want a click handler on our register button. But when we click it, it calls our compare password function. And then we can add some visual cues and print out an error message if the passwords don't match. We're going to go back to the register form. And now we're going to add in here on-click equals return compare passwords. So we're using JavaScript to interrupt the form submission that gets triggered by clicking our button. First, it's going to go and run our little validator function. So if I try to register now with two different passwords, the form should just stay where it is. There won't be any visual cue yet why it isn't working, but I shouldn't get taken to my save page until the passwords match. Try it out. Refresh. So I'm going to put in an extra character. I'm going to put in a 5. And now when I click register, nothing happens. Now what we want to do is we want to change this message here and the coloring on this element to show an error that says passwords don't match. So here's what we'll do. We're going to give this heading an ID, and then we can reference it in our JavaScript. So give this an ID of let's say message. So then in our JavaScript, we can change the content of this element, and we can also change the class. So it'll actually change the color as well as the text in this message. So we'll go back to my JavaScript. And not only are we going to return false, cool. Here we're not getting the message, we're just getting the object itself from the DOM. So now we can say message dot inner text is equal to match. And we can change the class. So this alert info, that'll toggle that gray background to a light blue. If the passwords match, we can put the original message back, which I'll just copy and paste. And again, we'll toggle the color back to alert.secondary. So if the passwords are fine, we'll display our default message with our gray class. When the passwords don't match, we're going to change that message and the display of that message element. We'll give this a try, see how it works. So I'll go to register. So by default, I get gray here, and I'll put in so now I've got two different passwords. And now I get this error message showing up. Okay, so we're changing the class and we're changing the message. So our register is basically done now. I think we've done everything we need to do here. Dominic, if we have time, we'll come back at the end of class and add that ability to see the password. Basically, the way that will work is we'll add a little icon to the right of the password box, like a show or hide button. And when we click it, we're going to use JavaScript again to change the type of the input from password to text. That will allow us to see the characters in the box. Once we make it hidden again, we'll toggle the input type again from text back to password. Actually, you know what? I think we have time. While we're on the register page, we've got time. Let's go ahead and add it before our next break, and then we can do the login checking, the login validation last. I think we've got time to do it. So we need, I've put them on Blackboard actually, we need a couple of little icons here. Right? We want an icon that we can click on to show or hide the password. So I've actually put these, I think I put images up here. Oh yes, they're here, great. The show hide icon for the password. So we're going to create a folder for this in our project, and then we can download these two images. So in the project folder, I'm going to make a new folder in the root. We've got CSS and JS, so I don't want it in there. Just click a file in my root. I'm going to create a new folder called IMG. So we can put any images in here. And now I've got these show hide icons for password. It can't be found. Bear with me, I have them. them somewhere. Hang on, I will grab them. I know I've got them. Okay, here are the images. I'll put them in the chat. There's one. Let me just download these quickly, and then I'll also put them on D2L. Do you get 404? Oh, it's private. Sorry, bear with me. I'll get them. Sorry about that. The repo's private. Yes, we all love a good 404. Okay. Show. So here's the show icon. It's now here. I will also upload the hide icon. Here's hide. Okay, so you should be able to get these two now from D2L. So show is first, hide is second. So I want you to save these into your, so what I'll do is save this one into my PHP tunes img folder. There's show.png. And then grab the hide icon. No, I don't want to do that. I'll just click on it and save it also into my hide. So then we're going to display the show icon here. And when we click it, we'll use JavaScript to show the characters in the box. Shouldn't take us too long. It'll also mean writing another function in our JavaScript file. So beside the password input, which is here on line 1819, I'm going to put in an image, the source, img show.png. Our ID is show hide. We'll give it some alternate text of show password. And then we're going to add a click handler. So when you click it, we're going to use JavaScript to call a method show hide password. So we'll need to add this method into our JavaScript file. It'll be pretty simple. Shouldn't take us long to do. So the register form, we've now got this little icon here. And when we click it, we want to show the characters here. We want to convert the input from the type password to type text. Then we toggle the icon and we can then reverse it. So we just added our show image. We make sure we get an ID, and then we're going to call show hide password. So we'll write this function. It'll take us a couple of minutes. We'll test it out and we'll take a break. So we'll make a new function in our JavaScript file called show hide password. Reference password, input, and show icon. Because we're going to toggle both of them. Right? When we click show, the password should show up and the icon should change from show to hide. And then when we reverse them, the text box becomes a password box again, and the hide show icon becomes hide. Sorry, hide icon becomes show again. So we're accessing the password input. And the show hide image, because we want to toggle both of these. So if it's a password box, we're going to toggle it to text. And we're going to change the icon from show to hide. If the type is already text, we're going to set it to password. And we're going to do the show image. So this way we should be able to toggle the type of input as well as that icon. We'll give this a shot and see how it works. So I'll save that change. So when I click it, my password is visible and the hide icon shows up. If I click it again, it's now hidden again. And my type goes back from text to password. Just for you, Dominic. Done in 13 minutes. Okay, so you can use, I think it is a good feature. It's true, often people mistype passwords. So definitely as a user, I appreciate the ability to be able to toggle and make sure what my password is before I go ahead and save my account. So this little script will do it. Okay, it's 1:51. We're due for a break. I need to get off my feet for a few minutes, fill up my water. I will push what we've done so far up to GitHub. Mike, should you do 2 separate toggles? What you could do, no, what I think I would do is just pass in the IDs of the icons as parameters. So that way you could apply that same function to both fields. Rather than hard coding them, you pass the ID as a variable parameter. Yeah, that would be more effective. Okay, we're gonna take a break here. I will upload to Git and we'll be back in 10.